We can just kind of dive in. I would love for you to introduce yourself, but yeah, I know obviously we just jumped in and started chatting about acquisitions and attorney stuff. And I am excited to have you on the show, Monica Gilroy. I don't even know how long you've been in the business. I feel like it's been a very long time though.
It has been, yeah. So I've been a trial attorney for 33 years, which is crazy. But I would say probably for the last 20, I've had a lot of really good involvement in our SFR, single family property management and all things property management world, mostly because of our probably mutual friend, Robert Locke, who introduced me way back to our local Atlanta NARPM chapter and who over the years has really kept me in play. And it's been a really great addition to my practice, Stacey, because it lets me work with people like you. And that's how you and I met. And I've really, really just enjoyed it. And so probably I would say even these last maybe even 10 years have been really, really focused on helping national companies with their national needs, right? I have a national practice as it relates to property management. I have clients that are really, really big and institutional and really, really small. And I help them with making things better in their operations. I help them with documents. I help them with what we're going to talk about today, acquisitions. I help them with fair housing and EPA issues. So it's been a really great, fun time because I love, love, love this world. I think the people in it are so entrepreneurial and smart. I just love being around people like that. Just like when I first met you and we clicked, I'm like, oh, I like this lady. So
Oh, I know. Well, the feeling is mutual. I know. We got to
yes,
hang out in Greenville, I think, South
Greenville.
Carolina.
Yes,
But
yes. It
yeah,
was wonderful. I loved it so much. Yes.
yeah, yeah. I know you're awesome. And of course, we've followed each other online for quite some time. So,
Yes.
okay, well, acquisitions. People love to talk about acquisitions. It's like the sexy subject in property
Yes.
management, I find, way more so than operations, although they're both very important. And
Yes.
my focus, like I was telling you, is on acquisitions, like teaching operators to go from operator mindset to acquire mindset. And instead of focusing on building door by door, why not go out into your community and find those businesses that, want to exit, whether they're a boomer business or some sort of other business. So let's just kind of dive into what your role would look like in an acquisition. Maybe when's a good time to ping you for that, and we can just kind
Definitely.
of dive in.
No, yeah, I think that there's a real danger to not having an attorney in at the right time. And I think it needs to either start with someone like you who has vast operational experience, or not operational, but experience with an acquisition, right?
Mhm.
Because again, I'm kind of weird. I'm like a unicorn in this industry. There's not really anyone who does what I do with my type of practice. So I have experience in helping to value what you could get, right? But a lot of lawyers don't, right? And so I think they should be starting with, in terms of what is my business worth? And if you're acquiring, what should I be paying, right? What is the price? I think it's really important to have a professional like you involved in that. I have found that in my experience, because I've handled really, really big acquisitions to really, really small and everything in between. But what I found is that you should at least reach out to an attorney in the beginning, even if you're going to work with someone like you, because there's a lot of things I have seen that can go sideways when you're trying to get to like a letter of intent state or anything, or not. For example, I had one a few years ago, they did not have a non disclosure agreement while the other person was looking at their company. And I came in after the fact and I'm like, people are looking at your books and doing all this highly personal things without an NDA. I'm like, this is ridiculous. So it's stuff like that that I think an attorney brings to the table a lot of just maybe the pitfalls that could happen. From my perspective, calling us early is really best. Really
Right.
best.
Okay. Yeah. Well, and probably using the right documents too. So, something that I'm working on teaching, like I'm doing a 1-day event in Las Vegas in January, although this may be posted out in the world after the fact, but I'm rolling out a 4-month program of working side by side with me as far as, hey, from start to finish and like the messy middle. Because I think a lot of times when people want to talk about acquisitions, all they really care about is like the valuation part of it. They're like hyper fixated on that. But I'm like, well, it's kind of putting the cart before the horse, because if you don't even have identifying like what market you want to go in and what kind of business you want to buy, it doesn't matter like what it'll cost, right?
100%, 100%. And
Yeah.
I'm sure you see this too. It's very important to understand that you're not buying in 99% of the times the entire business. Now, I've done some of those types of transactions, and it's been like, for example, I know Texas has some very specific rules about how you can transfer contracts and how you can't. But sometimes I find, and you've probably seen this too, people go in not understanding that you do not have to buy the entire ABC company. You can just buy the accounts. And that's why, again, getting the lawyer involved early. Do you have assignability language in your property management agreements? Obviously, I think everybody should, because otherwise you're handcuffing yourself when you come time to sell. Or if you're acquiring, that's potentially, right, Stacey, like a driver to the numbers. If you're having to wait on owner permission. So I agree with you. I think it's got to be approached much more holistically, almost like planning it out, talking it out. And then when you get to the document stage, there's just so many other things to think about. Again, horror story, true story,
Yes.
big sale quite a few years ago, big sale, but came to me after they had already negotiated anything more just to get a scrivener to write it. Some of these terms were egregious. I mean, things that I'm like, you can't agree to that. Well, it's too late because they'd already gone that far without either talking to someone like you or talking to someone like me. And for example, there was an employment contract for the principal who was going to be staying afterwards. It was horrible. I mean, luckily we were able to get that renegotiated, but there were some things, there were big holes and gaps in ownership. And it really, and ultimately it ended up being a very bad situation for everybody. And literally today, as we sit here, that group, they have split. Like they're not even involved anymore with each other. And it's all because they just, like you said, cart before the horse, they jumped in too fast. They didn't think
Right.
about it.
Right. Yeah. They don't know what they don't know. Right.
Right.
I just recently did a boot camp online, kind of like the 90-day, plan, right? The 90-day roadmap to buying. And I kind of use this analogy mostly because I love TJ Maxx, but I was like, right. I was like, okay, so if you want to go shopping in TJ Maxx, you know exactly the process, right? Like you drive up to the parking lot, you park your car, you get out of your car, you walk into TJ Maxx, you usually grab a cart. I always grab a cart because I'm going to find way too much stuff I don't need. I'm going to buy the layout of the store. You know exactly where the candles are, like where the sale items are, whatever. Go up to the register, you know how to pay, get out to your car, put it in your trunk. But people don't buy companies like that all the time, right? So it's like a huge transaction. Now, I think it's an amazing transaction. Like I think that it's a great deal, especially when you're buying a property management business, because it's like you're buying revenue that's already coming in. But you should be surrounding yourself with the experts because otherwise, I mean, it's not like a normal everyday thing. Like it's not a TJ Maxx transaction.
I love TJ Maxx. I was at Marshall's on Saturday, actually. It was fabulous. So I had the best time. But yes, no, I agree. And it also, because oftentimes people are, it's like just adding water to your business. It's like you're going from maybe, let's say you're at 100 and you're acquiring another 100. That's a lot of operational things that need to be discussed. And another horror story was they didn't have any discussion about the kind of like the duplication of efforts, right? So there was no discussion prior to me coming in about what platform were they going to use? Were they going to go through Appfolio? Were they going to go through Rentvine, right? There was no conversations about who's going to handle the accounting. It was like all the little checkpoints that maybe you're just so excited to buy, you're just not thinking about. And it made it so much more complicated at the end of the day. Also, it's important to know that when I handle these things for people, it's not arm breaking amounts of money. Like at this point, what I've done for people, I've done these so many times. I'm not really recreating wheels. And I think a lot of lawyers too, people get nervous, like the lawyers are going to cost so much money. It's just, we're just another negotiated part of the process. Maybe each side has their own, maybe one party pays for part of it, but it's just so important because you would never go and buy a house without getting the proper expert advice. So they need people like you to help them. And I've been following the boot camp ideas, and I think it's brilliant because it really helps people get excited and know what to do. And also give them the tools. You're giving them the tools they need, which is fantastic.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Well, and then partnering with an attorney who has been through it several times, not using AI to write contracts.
Oh, no.
Right. Like,
Absolutely.
yeah.
No, I got to tell you something. There has been an explosion of the use of AI in the legal world, and it is very, very scary. I had a really complicated real estate litigation case a couple weeks ago, and my client was like, "Well, I don't know why you're saying we have risk here." And I said, "Well, because there's really no legal authority to back us up." And she sent me, Stacey, this big list of cases that, well, here's whatever it's called, Gronk put together.
Mm,
Stacey, every single one was fake. Every single one was made up. And I'm like, people have got to understand that AI is wonderful in many things. But yes, when it comes to legal stuff, absolutely not. You
right.
can't take that risk.
Right. No, no, for sure. They should definitely be partnering with somebody who has all the and I'm assuming you have the boilerplate documents for
Absolutely.
particular states or areas. And
Mhm.
then if you haven't worked in that area, you can get them.
Yeah. I mean, again, my practice is national because short of the going to eviction court, the laws are pretty uniform in landlord tenant across the United States. We have obviously, like in your state, there's some state specific things and there's some even city by city. Obviously, California is a beast in and of itself. But when we're talking about the purchasing or selling of a business, that's just contracts. And there's really not a whole lot of differentials across the country. And yeah, and starting first with the non-disclosure agreement, moving to a letter of intent is what I like to see. Then we start, once we get our terms locked in, we start drafting the various documents. The financing is important, right? Some people do owner financing, some people don't, some people get loans, maybe you need a personal guarantee. So these are things where having that attorney come in, it's just so important to get it papered. And yeah, you're completely correct though. I've done so many over all these years that I have them for big, small, and everything in between. And that's why I'm saying people shouldn't be thinking, oh, it's going to cost so much. It really isn't. And it's a really important part of it. It's why you have value too, because again, and I'm a lawyer, but you've lived it, right? So having someone like you as a partner to be like, here's what I experienced, watch out for this, then you're giving that practical side. And I think it really makes it such a easier process for everybody to have kind of both of the experiences that we can bring to the table to do it. So
Oh, for sure. For sure. Yeah. And I think a lot of times what I do is I help people even just get into that mindset of, hey, you can go find them, but you've got to treat it like a job. So I kind of start in the very, very beginning stages. Definitely the middle I guide because I always remind people I'm not a CPA or attorney. So here's a great time to go find your partners to make sure that you have that particular guide. And then closing, the integration part of it, especially if you're buying a business that's totally different. And I use the term business. I usually recommend, again, I'm not an attorney, but I recommend like buying more of the contracts than the actual company.
yeah,
Just because most of the time people don't need the actual company anyway.
that's
So
right.
with that, like with the contracts part of it, if they're not assignable, like within the contract, can people still purchase the contracts? Are they?
You can, yes. I mean, it's just that you're going to have some extra steps, right? You're going to have to deal with the fact that if the property management agreements are saying that the owner has to consent to assignment, which in, again, Texas, I learned it's prohibited. You cannot make things assignable. And I'm like, okay, well, I learned something new. So if you're buying, right? Well, first of all,
Mhm.
if you're selling, if you're getting ready to sell, really look at your property management agreement. Be sure that it's got, it doesn't have prohibitions, or if it does, have a plan, because what it's going to entail is it's going to mean you need to, in my opinion, disclose that early and upfront that I do need owner approval. Now, maybe that's not a big deal. Maybe you have 10 owners who have 10 houses and it's not a big deal. But if you have 35 individual owners, you're going to have to get in writing them agreeing to the assignment. And that's where you have to be careful too, because you want to be explaining to them. Usually you're almost having to think about, like you said, the end part when you're explaining to the owner that I need your permission. You're going to have to be thinking about, can I legitimately say to them, the processes won't change. I'm still going to be around. And it kind of forces you to think about more things. You absolutely can do it, but as a seller, you've got to really think through that process of, okay, what's this going to look like? And then as the buyer, you have to really be understanding, well, okay, there could be some people who say no, and that specific contract may not be assignable. So being sure you have what we call clawback language, valuing the properties or the accounts in some fashion to ensure if an owner doesn't go, you're not buying something that is half of what you thought you were buying. So it
Yeah.
definitely, to your point, you've got to think it out. You have to think it out. You can't just kind of, yay, I'm going to do this. But yeah, and I have had some where we've sold the entire company. But to your point, it's usually because there's a reason, either legally, like in Texas, or somebody just doesn't have one. Maybe they just don't have a company. And so they want to buy the whole thing. And then that obviously has other challenges too, looking at structure and also the liability, right? If you buy an entire company, you're buying not just their assets, but their liabilities too. So you've got to be sure you're thinking through all of that as well.
Yeah. So do you give advice to people as far as that goes? I mean, I know there's pros and cons to both, like the contracts versus the stock purchase, right? Do you have a favorite?
I do. I'm with you. I think that it's always better to just buy the contracts. It's clean. It's especially if you don't have assignability issues, it's clean. You can carve out very clearly that you're not responsible for anything post acquisition or pre acquisition. It's an easier way to message to the tenants, to the owners, and all of it. And honestly, that's where the money is, right? It's not, the money isn't in these other places that are there. So yeah, no, I'm with you. But I have done some the other way. And again, it's usually been a special circumstance. But no, if someone said, should I buy this whole company? You're like, no, just buy the contract.
Right, right. I know. Although I will say, so the company that I bought in 2020 in my market, I actually did buy the whole company but it was a business that their property management agreements were a page and a half.
There you go.
And they were not assignable. And it was honestly kind of cleaner, even in a weird way, to just do it that way. And then I had negotiated up front to have the seller like stay on and help me basically transfer them into my business and then I eventually closed down that company. So but with that, it did take a lot longer. It was a longer process. And I was basically managing two very different companies, like side by side. I had to hire somebody that could understand how to help me run like the old school business and then help me like learn into the new business. So yeah, definitely pros and cons, but ended up being
right. And to your point, again, like sometimes you just have to do it that way. There is no choice. And so it's truly part of the business decision. But just to your point, knowing the pros and cons is critical. You got to know going in.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Well, and even then, I mean, I didn't have necessarily a guide at that time. And so there were some things where I was like, oh yeah, I definitely would not have done it that way. But now I'm trying, that's what I'm doing out here, trying to help people say, hey, these are the things I would not recommend doing. So as far as, I mean, we kind of talked about like when to involve you and obviously like through the whole process, where do you see people make like the biggest mistakes?
I think the biggest mistakes are probably in the beginning where you're not sitting down and playing the chess game all the way to the end. I think people get so excited at an opportunity and they're not realizing the little nitpicky things that have to be done. For example, let's say that you're at a stage as a seller, right? And you are wanting to exit. Well, maybe you have very loyal, dedicated staff. You better negotiate what's going to happen to that staff, right? Because you can't guarantee anything once you've sold, right? If you are concerned about your valued employee, you're going to need to say, part of my sale is that you need to give Susie a 1-year contract at this amount of money, right? They don't think about the little tiny aspects of it. And that's where people get jammed up. And then what happens is they get so far down the road, like the example I talked to you about, where then they brought me in and I was like, why did you agree to this? Why did you agree to that? And it was things that they didn't even think about, especially, and this is true, especially this is where people can get jammed up. If you have partners, right? I have told some stories about partners I've had in the past. And someone asked me recently, if you had one piece of advice, what would your advice be? And I was like, don't have a partner, or at least have controlling, and always have controlling interest. Just always be sure you have that 51%. But that can be really tricky too, that you better be sure if it's you and 2 other people that own this, because a lot of people have that. They have an operator, but then they have the money people. You better be sure you've talked all of that chess game through with everybody and everybody's on the same page, because that's what happened in this one that became extremely, extremely volatile. Is there was a real difference between what the partners were thinking because they just hadn't talked it out. So you've got to think about it from all the way to the beginning. And yes, it's so exciting, but you have to go. There's no rush. I love your 90-day. There's no rush. Right. You got to be sure you've thought everything through. And I think that's what I have seen repeatedly is people getting pressure sometimes to sell, or also I have some clients who have investors, they have pressure to buy. And so they're maybe not looking as carefully as they should. And that's not good either. You've got to just take a breath and think through the whole process. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Yep. The chessboard is very important. Yes. In fact, my friend Pablo Gonzalez, he gave me the nickname of Queen of the Chessboard.
There you go. I
Which
love
is
it.
so
Yeah.
funny. I know that's
But it
funny.
makes sense. But when I think about all the good things you've done, yeah, I mean, you got to think it through. And we get so excited as people, but
Yep.
as business people, it's got to be like just laser focused on every little aspect.
Yep.
And again, I use the example of the employee, a good one. Somebody just took it for granted that they would keep that person on. The minute the sale happened, they literally sent out the termination notices. And the
Right.
seller was like, oh no. And I'm like, well, you didn't negotiate it. You
Right.
didn't talk
Right.
about
Right.
it.
Yeah. And I think that's really important. Kind of what you brought up is removing the emotion from what you're doing, because it is really exciting. And then those sellers that maybe even haven't moved past the point of like that their business isn't their baby, but they never really built it like an asset. So they're going to already be like kind of a hot mess emotional person, in my opinion.
Totally.
And so then as the buyer, you've really got to like shelf any emotion that you have. And then, yeah, surround yourself with people who can be really objective to say, oh, have you thought about this, this, and this? Or in my experience, that is not a great idea, or whatever the case may be. Because I've had a couple people come to me as well, like kind of after the fact of kind of before they're like totally down the road, but they had already agreed to no clawback. And I was like, why would you do that? And they're like, oh, the seller didn't want it. And I'm like, that's a red
Of course
flag.
they didn't.
Of course, I know. I'm like, of
Like,
course they didn't.
seller didn't want it. Yeah. And they're not realizing. Yeah. And you're right, because it's not overly complicated, but at the same token, you probably haven't done this before as an average
Right.
property manager or person, right? This is still new to you. And why wouldn't you want to call upon somebody who's done it before and also who has done it successfully and knows where the pitfalls lie? And I think that's the big thing, because and I'm sure you have too, I've just seen some situations that have just gone really downhill. I had another one about a year ago where they hadn't really accurately firmed up how to quantify the clawback. And that's one piece of advice that I sometimes give is you've got to, if you're having that clawback language of what's it going to be, especially if you have a staggered payout, right? They had made the clause says something like the clawback number would be the average of something rather than just a number, right? And that got everybody turned upside down, because at the end, when I was brought in, it was to try to help figure out, was there a breach of contract or not? Because what was that price? And it was just something as specific as that is a big deal. And so I came into that situation and we ended up just negotiating it out. But people were talking about suing each other. And in the event of a breach, where there are going to be attorney's fees that would have to be paid. And it's just so important to have literal checklists, or use the queen of the chessboard to have something that really thinks about all those steps, because again, it's things that you may not even think about being important that suddenly become really important.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. So yeah, what any other like advice that you can give, or anything else you want
Yeah,
to
I mean, I think the other thing I would say is that if you are I have advice for sellers and advice for buyers. I think if you're thinking of selling, you need to start thinking about it like now. Like basically, if you're saying I'm 65 and I want to retire, I don't know what, or I'm gonna just write a book, I don't want to do it. Start thinking about it now and what it would look like, because I think sometimes people get approached with offers and
Yeah.
they, as sellers, and they haven't thought about what it would look like or what do they want to do. They haven't thought about, oh, I just signed a 5-year lease in this building. Well, all right. If you're not going to do it, what are you going to do with that 5-year lease? So if you are a potential seller listening to this, think about contacting a Stacey now, right? Think about, when would you, I need to bring a lawyer in, right? But think about what you want from it. Really create, almost as a seller, a wish list. Not that you're going to get it, but think about it now, because what happens is there's a lot of companies that do just approach you and you get all excited because you see the numbers, but you haven't thought about it. Now, for a buyer, I think it is extremely important not to get 100% hung up on just the financials, especially if you're a buyer coming in and you don't know what our industry looks like, right? Because there's all sorts of things that as small business owners are paid through the company, our country club bill or our car note or whatever it might be. So don't just be looking at the bottom lines, because also some people track, for example, what they make through resident benefit packages or what they make through this. So as a buyer, I want you to go in more open-minded. And also there's value to the reputation. There's value to the company you're buying. Buying, maybe somebody who's got a 2-star rating might be cheaper, but you're buying somebody that's just 2-star rating. So you're going to have to think about rebranding as a buyer. That's another cost, as opposed to, I am buying a Cadillac brand of company and I'll be able to just, maybe operate it with my other one. You can call it a division of my current company. But really, I think people get hung up sometimes just on what the bottom line gross might be or the bottom line net. You can't do it. It has to be much more holistic. Having conversations with the owners and the sellers makes a big difference. So those would be my 2 pieces of advice, in addition to everybody playing that chess game through.
Right. So going back to the seller, do you recommend like a year pre-planning, couple year pre-planning?
I think
like
a year. I think
a
a year,
year?
minimum 6 months, at a minimum 6 months. I have a current client now who came to me and he's like, I've been thinking about it for 6 months. I think I'm ready to deploy. And I said, okay. And one of the things I asked him is I said, do you have already people in mind who you would like to approach? And he had. Because he thought about it, and he had it ranged from everything to somebody that he knew really well who didn't have this as part of their business to a larger institutional player. And he also had who he would never sell to, right? He said, I would never sell to, and he named off some things. And I was like, okay. So, but I would say he probably had started about 6 months ahead of contacting me. And we've been in the process now for almost 3. So, I mean, it takes a while.
Right. Yeah, no, that's a really good point. And I think that kind of checklist as far as who you'd want to sell to, who you wouldn't want to sell to. Yeah, thinking
about. Do you want to work? Do you want to keep working?
Right.
I don't want to work. I had one client who, again, people take for granted as the seller that he was going to get a contract to be hired. I said, well, have you negotiated a contract? Well, no, I just assumed they'd keep me on. I'm like, why? What if they already have you? What if they already have you? What if they don't need you? So, and again, an employment contract is separate from your buyout, from your payout, right? And that was another problem I saw once is, again, I was brought in to try to help after the fact. And it was not clear, was this salary that they were getting, was it a salary or was it part of the purchase price? And that was a big mess. That was a big mess. Right. And again, then you're paying a lawyer more than you need to, because then that's if you just called me in the beginning, I would say we could have saved all this hassle now. So, and same when you're the buyer is just be very clear. Well, no, I don't need a senior accounting person because I have that. Or no, I don't need your 3 PMs because I already have the PM. So you've got to it's got to be a lot of open dialogue. That's why I suggest you paper things at the end, but you do need to have just over breakfast conversations on both sides to really get a feel for it, to get it done.
Absolutely. And I think as a buyer too, just being open-minded to sometimes not every deal is a good deal. And when you have those conversations, it's better to have those conversations up front. And if the seller is adamant, no, you have to take my 3 employees. But as the buyer, you're like, I don't need those 3 employees. And you can't come to an agreement, then it's just not the right deal for you. And that's okay.
It's not the right time. That's right. And I always have said this, one of my mentors told me that she always would say, contracts are like buses. If you miss one, another one will come along shortly. And that's really true, right? So if one conversation isn't working out, who's to say you don't go to a meeting or see something online and you're like, wait a minute, here's another opportunity that probably might be even better. So it's good.
Yeah, no, we talk a lot about that when I'm helping working with the people that I work with, of switching your mindset from like the operator mindset to acquirer mindset, because I'm a firm believer once you start believing like, oh, I'm an acquirer, I buy businesses. Like when you walk around and you say that out loud, then the opportunities literally like start coming to you. So to your point, if it's not the right deal, if you can't make it fit into your model of what you want to buy, it's okay to walk away. And it's okay, because you'll find another one. Or maybe the seller will have a change of heart 6 months down the road. Maybe they'll be like, you know what, I really am done. And I really actually don't care about my 3 employees. So go ahead and buy my business.
I'm done. I'm out. Yeah. No, you're exactly, I agree. Your philosophy is 100% correct. 100%. I agree 100%. And again, it's really fun and empowering to be an inquirer too, because again, being entrepreneurial, I tell my story sometimes. I found myself sort of accidentally having to have my own law firm almost 20 years ago. I never went out of law school as one of those people, oh, I'm going to hang my own shingle and all this. I loved being inside where I was, but some things happened where a bunch of us had to leave the firm we were with at the time. And now I think about, how could I ever go to be not the boss? How could I handle that now? It's having your own business is really an empowering thing, especially for women. I find that we are such natural leaders and multitaskers that we make excellent CEOs and we make excellent acquirers because we can see it, we have people skills, and we can really present opportunities for many people. And so, yeah, the acquirer mindset is, I like that. Yeah. And you're right. Saying it out loud, people will remember that. They'll say, wait a minute, Stacey said she was acquiring now. And and then they know you, they like you. And that's my other tip. And I think you'd probably agree. People in business just want to do business with people they like. It's that simple. There is no secret sauce. Just if people like you, they want to work with you.
Yep.
And then always, of course, make the ask. That's something another longtime boss of mine always said, is that get to know them, be friends with them. They'll want to work with you, but at the same time, then you make your ask. Stacey, I would really love your business. This has been a great lunch hearing about your kids. And it's that simple to me. And that's what I think makes it really exciting to have that entrepreneurial opportunity.
Yeah, no, I love that. Yeah, that's a lot about what I teach actually, is that relationship building, because I have closed deals off of cold calls, but they weren't like cold calls, right? So yeah, they were cold. They were cold, but it wasn't like, hey, I'm Stacey, I want to buy your business. That's not how that call went. But you can build relationships off of cold calls. So that's something that I teach people how to do.
I love it.
Yeah, so it's been a lot of fun so far, and I'm looking forward to 2026 and beyond. So yeah, I'll have to have you on again, because I would love to dive deep more into the like women in business and using our feminine leadership style and all of that.
I love that. Yeah. I would also love to come to one of your in-person events. I'd be happy to do that too. That would be fantastic, because I'd like to see you in person. But I think it's nice sometimes when we have those kind of, I think it's the legal side is great, but there are so many practical things that I cannot talk about, right? Because I haven't lived in the trenches like you. And I love having collaborations like this, because we bring so much to the table when we have shared experiences, when we link up people in the industry. Because again, like there are certain things I could not ever speak to that you all know better than anybody. And it's really neat. But yes, I've been a woman-owned business now for almost 20 years, and I mentor and I volunteer. And I think it's just really important. And I like to help any young people, but I think especially in this industry, we have such female-centric ownership. It's a gift. It's a real gift, and it can really help other women too. So NARPM has their wonderful women's council, and I really enjoy the messages that they send there as well. It's great. So no, I'd love to be back. It's fantastic.
Yeah, no, that would be fun to talk about, because that's one of my biggest things that I'll be focusing on in the next few years is, continuing to empower our younger leadership, our female-owned businesses and all that. And I would love to be in a room with mostly women and teaching them how to buy businesses and how to empower themselves in their lives, because I'm a firm believer in that. For sure.
100%, my friend. Yes, I'm right. I'll be right there with you, whatever you need. So never hesitate to call on me. I'm always happy to help. I love it.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. I really appreciate having you, Monica Gilroy. And are you doing anything in the new year? Is there anything that you'd like to promote, or?
I've got a lot going on. I've just recently joined as faculty to PM University, and this is an incredible online-based educational program. Please go check it out, pmuniversity.com. And I'm doing a number of things through them, which is exciting. I will be at broker owner for NARPM, and I'll be at the Capital Summit for NARPM. I've been doing a lot with them as it relates to trying to get our EPA laws changed. But I probably am speaking tomorrow. Actually, I'm speaking to the Florida chapter of NARPM. I'm going to be at a lot of national conferences this year. I'll be in Idaho. I'll be in Texas. I'll be in North Carolina. I'll be in Georgia. So just if you enjoy hearing all my silly stories, you can literally Google me and you'll find me almost everywhere. But please do check out PMU. It's really, really edge cutting technology, and the content and the faculty. I'm just one of many. It's extraordinary. Our Dumbledore is Jason Wolf out of Utah.
Yes.
That's
Yes. Yes.
he is our dean of admission. So that is his baby, but it's really cool. So I would say definitely people should check that out. It's neat.
Yeah. Yeah. I just had a conversation with him last week.
Yes.
Actually. Yeah. Really.
Yes.
Yeah. Really cool. I love.
He's a nice guy. Yeah. He's a
very
great guy.
nice
Yeah.
guy. Yeah. Yeah. And it's cool what he's doing.
PMU is really cool. Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. Well, awesome. Well, we'll put in the show notes all the ways that people can contact you. And again, thank you so much for coming on. And your hair looks amazing. I think you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And thank you for having me. Your hair looks great too. So,
Yes.
but have a really nice holiday. And I hope I can see you soon in person again.
Yes.
Hopefully I'll see you very soon. But no, thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.